The year of the protester. We'll find out what was behind Time magazine's decision to name the protester as its Person of the Year. And the time now, 12 minutes past 4 o'clock. From a small town in Tunisia to Cairo's Tahrir Square to New York's Zuccotti Park to cities across this province, protesters of all ages and backgrounds made headlines across the world in 2011. And now Time magazine has named the protester its Person of the Year. Joining me now with his thoughts on this announcement, Patrick McCurdy, who teaches communication at the University of Ottawa, is an expert on civil society and social movements. Hello.
Hello.
Were you waiting this morning to get the announcement?
It actually, I missed it. I had been busy with its exam time and things and course designing. But when I heard it, I thought it was quite interesting, to be honest.
Because?
I guess if you also look at, I did watch the clip on the Today Show where you can see the managing editor sort of discuss sort of why the protester was named sort of the Person of the Year, as well as the competition. And the competition is also interesting, at least the two that Rick Stengel sort of discussed. So the first was Admiral William McCraven, who was who oversaw the operation that captured and killed Osama bin Laden, and the second was Kate Middleton, the now Duchess of Cambridge. So, in terms of competition, well, Kate Middleton had very much a fairy tale wedding that sold a lot of tea towels and coffee mugs. What did she do? Well, she married a prince. I mean, if she married a prince and convinced the prince to abolish the monarchy, then maybe we have a Person of the Year. But when you compare that to sort of the protesters and the various movements that sort of this idea covers, it pales. So you look at sort of the removal of Ben Ali in Tunisia, Hosni Mubarak in Egypt, Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, uprisings in Yemen and Bahrain, and the rise of the Occupy Wall Street movement. You can't compare. Two other things which are also really interesting about actually the cover. If you have seen the cover of the Time magazine, it's a picture done by Shepard Fairey, who's a street artist, who also did the Obama Hope poster that became the iconic image of the Obama campaign. Same artist. So that's interesting in and of itself because it was, Obama's campaign was very much a grassroots campaign, so they used the same artist. But the first is that the person on the cover is androgynous. It could be a man, could be a woman, which is incredibly important, especially given the role that women have played in the uprisings in North Africa and Egypt in particular. This can't be understated. Second is that the protesters wearing a mask, but in many countries it's actually illegal to wear a mask at protest. For example, in Germany and in Canada, there was recently a private member's bill done by Blake Richards, which is just being discussed now. It's Bill C-309, which essentially would make it illegal to have any form of face covering during a protest or a riot.
So the protester, as Time magazine's Person of the Year choice, you're saying really speaks to what's happening in the world right now.
It speaks to what's happening in the world right now. It also speaks to sort of, again, the Time magazine. This is a tried and tested sort of formula. It's the end of the year. We understand things sort of in years, right? So we look at this as happening in 2011. But we can't understate the sort of the amount of time, connections, and that these events sort of take. Protests don't happen overnight, and protests don't topple dictators overnight. There were, especially in Tunisia and Egypt, ongoing protests, repressive conditions where there finally was a breaking point. What happened or what changed was you have this concept in social movement studies that talks about this idea of a political opportunity. And what that means is that sort of a window opens up for something to happen. So you have this one, almost like the straw, right? This one event in Tunisia. People in Egypt say, hey, we can do that. They mobilize their own networks, and these are networks which have been mobilized. There's a strong history of protests in Egypt. They do their events, right, ongoing. Other countries in the region see this and mobilize their own activists. Occupy Wall Street was started by adbusters who took out an ad in their own magazine, which sort of drew on the dialogue, the saying of Occupy Wall Street in their own in their own way, and then it was reinterpreted. So you can see how this can have a bit of a top-line effect, but they're very, very different contexts, and that has to be appreciated when we look at these different movements.
When you look at movements in past, historically, give us some of the big ones out there, if we can make any comparisons even.
Well, I guess if we understand, we have to sort of look at, what do we mean by social movements? And if we understand them as sort of collections of people or collective actions that want to transform sort of values in society, we can think about movements such as the women's movement, right? The suffragette movement. You can think about sort of the anti-nuclear movement, the green movement, movement, the ongoing environmental movement, the global justice movement as well, which really were all sort of precursors to this. People talk about Occupy Wall Street being new. However, it isn't. I mean, it's something which there's an established tradition of protest.
Yeah, civil rights movement, revolutions in Eastern Europe that brought down communism.
Exactly. I mean, the list, the list goes on. All these things are connected, and it's important to realize that things don't just happen out of the blue.
I wonder how important the role of the protester will be next year.
Well, this is something where it's not on a year-to-year basis. Protesting can sometimes be a dirty word, but it's something which is an everyday activity. Struggles are ongoing. They don't just end because we flip the calendar, we flip the sort of year, we have a new calendar. Things are ongoing. So I'm hoping what this does, and this announcement does, is sort of increase the visibility of what protest means and encourages people to get involved.